Today, we are going to look at horrifying footage captured seconds before the disaster from a woman who entered a gallery, not knowing it would be the last time anyone saw her alive, to a GoPro camera that caught the avalanche that ended a man's life. It was March 11, 2016, in Kreuzberg, Berlin. The air outside was cold, and inside a narrow warehouse gallery, people queued for the opening of a young artist's installation. The piece promised to dissolve perception through dense fog and lighting. Nobody expected that illusion to turn deadly. Anna Kruger, 30, lived for Berlin's small art scene. She worked nights as a barista and spent afternoons volunteering at pop-up exhibitions. She wasn't wealthy, but she was dependable, known among students for helping staff independent galleries that relied on unpaid labor. She loved immersive experiences, anything that played with light, sound, or perception, and often said real art should unsettle you, just enough to make you see differently. She had helped with several fog installations before, so when the gallery needed an usher for a new event, she agreed immediately. The artist used nitrogen-bubbled fog to create a floor-level white cloud. The gear involved chilled CO2 machines and nitrogen foggers meant for large outdoor stages, not confined rooms. Manufacturer notes warned against exceeding 20 people or disabling ventilation. The setup displaced oxygen near the floor, a risk everyone ignored. The event had no on-site safety officer or gas monitoring system, common omissions in small independent galleries. The manager, under pressure to deliver a flawless opening, dismissed the warnings as overly cautious, saying the fog would clear on its own. By 9 p.m., the space was packed. Dozens waited outside, phones ready. The manager switched off one vent to prolong the visual effect. Anna guided visitors with a flashlight, waving them toward the door when their time was up. It was loud and chaotic. People coughing but laughing. Near closing, Anna told a friend she wanted one last walk-through before they powered everything down. Footage from the ticket scanner camera shows Anna entering alone. Within seconds, her figure blurs in the fog. One usher noticed several people returning pale and disoriented, thinking it was a reaction to the strobe lights. When she went in to check, visibility was near zero. Her phone light revealed Anna collapsed on her side, her face pale and lips bluish. Two patrons helped pull her out while someone forced the windows open. Paramedics arrived within 10 minutes. They performed CPR immediately and administered high-flow oxygen on site, but she went into cardiac arrest en route to Charité Hospital. Doctors confirmed hypoxic injury from oxygen displacement. The investigation later found the foggers had continued venting nitrogen for over a minute after the emergency fans were turned off. Oxygen at ankle height had dropped to below 10%, enough to cause unconsciousness in under 30 seconds. A report from the fire brigade noted that the nitrogen flow system lacked an automatic shutoff and that the venue's ceiling extraction fans were insufficient for rapid gas exchange. The ventilation override had been taped down earlier to avoid resetting during performances. The news spread through Berlin's art community overnight. The gallery shut its social pages, and other venues quietly canceled immersive shows. Artists debated responsibility. Some called it a tragic system failure. Others blamed the reckless desire to push experience beyond safe limits. The artist behind the event withdrew from public life, refusing interviews. It was July 19, 2014 at Cornwall Regional Airport. The weekend air show drew hundreds of hobbyists. The hum of engines and diesel machinery mixed with laughter and chatter. Somewhere in that noise, a small decision, to get just a little closer for a better shot, would become irreversible. Callum Price, 24, had been obsessed with aviation since childhood. He studied aircraft maintenance but had not yet secured a full-time job, supplementing income by doing freelance video editing and uploading flight clips to a small YouTube channel. He craved recognition within the online plane spotting community, a niche world that rewarded daring angles and proximity. His channel had recently hit 10,000 views on a video filmed near a taxiway, encouraging him to push further. He was known to his friends as bright but impulsive. Callum carried a DSLR with a fixed lens, a small stabilizer rig, and noise-canceling headphones for monitoring sound. The day's conditions were ideal. Calm winds, good light, and a vintage de Havilland twin prop scheduled to depart at noon. He wanted a low, front-facing shot of its takeoff, with the landing gear lifting over his camera. Marshals had set up rope lines along the apron. but smaller airfields often allowed informal access. Ground vehicles operated in close proximity to spectators. At around 11:45 a.m., Callum slipped past the rope to a position behind a parked tow tractor. He crouched low, aligning his rig on a small tripod pointed toward the runway. The tow tractor, used to reposition aircraft, was idling between duties. Its driver, occupied with radio calls, had left it momentarily before reboarding to shift another plane. Several spectators were filming nearby, and one GoPro on a tripod captured the entire scene. Witnesses later recalled Callum adjusting his camera for several minutes, oblivious to the tractor's status. He wore large headphones, which dulled surrounding sounds. A friend shouted from the spectator area, but he didn't react. The tractor operator, after finishing a maneuver ahead, backed the vehicle to clear space for the taxiing plane. From his cab, visibility to the rear was limited. Callum's crouched position placed him directly below the driver's line of sight, hidden by the vehicle's rear wheel arch. Footage from a spectator's camera shows the tow tractor's reverse lights flash. A faint rumble follows as it begins rolling backward. Callum, noticing movement too late, stands abruptly, half-turned toward the driver. The left rear tire catches his hip, pinning him against the wheel of a parked Cessna. People in the background freeze, then rush forward as the tractor stops abruptly. The GoPro's wide shot captures the driver exiting in panic and bystanders shouting for help. Emergency marshals reached him within seconds. Callum was semi-conscious but unable to move, his lower body trapped beneath the tractor's chassis. The on-site medical crew stabilized his airway and circulation, while firefighters used lifting airbags to raise the vehicle. Despite rapid extraction, he went into shock from massive pelvic trauma. Resuscitation efforts continued for 20 minutes before he was declared dead on the apron at approximately 12:10 p.m. The authorities reviewed the footage and cited multiple failures in crowd management and equipment safety. The inquiry described the combination of relaxed supervision and spectator access as negligent by event design. The Cornwall Air Show was discontinued after that season. Amateur clips circulated briefly online before being removed at his family's request. His parents avoided interviews, releasing only a short message thanking rescuers. It was June 3, 2013, in Lyon, France. The Rue des Capucins had been half-closed for weeks, its old stone facades lined with barricades and the sharp smell of wet cement in the air. Beneath the temporary fencing, a small subcontracting crew worked overtime to finish a narrow trench that cut across the cobblestone street. The decision to push through another late shift, despite rising gas readings, seemed practical at the time. Just one more day to stay on schedule. Marc Moreau, 41, was a foreman with 2 decades of experience in municipal works. He'd started as a digger in his 20s and worked his way up, known for staying calm when others panicked. He ran a small crew of 6 under a city subcontractor that handled the utility tie-ins for Lyon's metro expansion. The company depended on staying in favor with the main contractor, and Marc often took on extra hours to meet deadlines. The trench they were cutting was part of a drainage link between old and new utility lines, shallow by metro standards, but complicated by the neighborhood's centuries-old cellars and voids. The ground here was unpredictable. Old organic waste and gas pockets were common, and municipal safety protocols required ventilation fans and periodic gas checks. The meters had shown fluctuating methane levels for 2 days, hovering around warning thresholds. Marc, eager to clear the job, told his men to keep fans running and continue cutting concrete for the cap slabs. The risk seemed minor, and stopping would mean missing the deadline. That afternoon, conditions worsened subtly. The air was heavy and humid, and the portable extractor fan sputtered intermittently under dust clogging its intake. A younger worker mentioned a faint odor in the trench, but Marc brushed it off. They had already drilled half the length. Turning back now would lose hours. Nearby shop cameras later showed pedestrians walking by as the crew worked behind fencing. The government's fixed CCTV caught the same scene in grainy detail. A man standing by the trench with a saw, others shoveling debris. At 17:42, a faint white vapor drifted upward from the open pit. One worker turned, pointing toward it. Before anyone reacted, a flash erupted, a flat white glare that filled the frame, followed by a rolling cloud of dust. The explosion's pressure wave threw men backward, scattering helmets and tools across the street. Windows along the block blew inward. Bystanders ran toward the smoke as debris settled. The trench itself had collapsed inward, burning insulation and splintered boards visible under a layer of dust. 2 workers lay near the curb, stunned but conscious. Mark had been directly above the saw when the gas ignited. Firefighters arrived within 5 minutes, responding to multiple emergency calls, and immediately ordered gas company technicians to shut nearby valves. The crew secured the area, used portable detectors to rule out residual leaks, and searched the pit with thermal imagers before pulling out the injured. Mark was pronounced dead at the scene from blast trauma and internal injuries. An investigation by authorities later determined that methane concentration had spiked moments before ignition, likely from a small underground cavity venting into the open trench. The cutting saw's 2-stroke petrol engine emitted a spark as it hit a rebar joint, enough to trigger the air-fuel mix. Rue des Capucins stayed cordoned off for months. The subcontractor was fined for breach of safety obligations, and the main contractor was cited for insufficient site supervision. Mark's surviving crew refused tunneling work for the rest of the year, several transferring to surface projects or quitting entirely. It was August 29, 2018, at an airport in southern Thailand. A Boeing 737 stood parked on the apron, its engines idling for pre-departure checks. Somsak Anarak, who had walked these lanes for 2 decades, moved without hurry. That familiarity made what followed all the more senseless. Somsak, 46, was a senior ground technician under a third-party contractor servicing multiple airlines. Over the years, he'd trained dozens of younger handlers and built a reputation as reliable, quiet, and stubbornly old-fashioned. His hearing had worsened from years of jet noise, and though the company offered ear defenders and safety refreshers, he often slipped into old habits, relying on muscle memory instead of radio cues. He had just a few years until retirement, saving for a house inland with his wife. The apron that night was slick and noisy. Several aircraft idled in parallel stands while the 737 he serviced was preparing for a midnight flight to Singapore. Technicians were performing an engine run-up as part of a post-maintenance ground power test, not yet connected to the boarding gate. The procedure required restricted access, with cones and safety lines marking the intake and exhaust hazard zones, roughly 25 feet forward and 100 feet aft at idle thrust. Ground crews were briefed, but with the shift running late, many moved in and out of zones freely. Somsak was assigned to retrieve empty baggage trolleys and secure the final tow bar. Shortly after 11 p.m., the left engine of the 737 began low idle operation. Warning beacons flashed, but on the cluttered apron, they blended with dozens of other lights. Somsak noticed one of the bright orange safety cones had toppled near the intake line. He walked toward it, while the others loaded carts onto the tug. CCTV later showed he was holding a handheld radio to his chest mic as he stooped to pick up the cone, seemingly unaware of the engine's rising hum. The nearest co-worker, roughly 50 feet away, later told investigators that Somsak was directly in front of the intake line for at least 3 seconds before he disappeared from view. The security camera captured it clearly. The reflective strips on his vest flickered in the jet wash, then whipped forward as the suction intensified. The cone rolled toward the engine, and in the same instant, Somsak was yanked off balance, first stumbling, then vanishing as if pulled through a doorway. A distinct thud and flame flash followed as the fan blades ingested debris. Ground crew rushed forward as the engine spooled down automatically after a compressor stall and flameout. Emergency responders arrived within minutes, cordoning off the aircraft and securing the scene. Maintenance personnel inspected the intake. What remained of the reflective vest was tangled in the fan hub and first compressor stage. Recovery teams later used tools and partial fan cowl removal to clear the debris. The coroner's report listed instantaneous death from blunt force trauma and massive internal injuries. Engineers confirmed the engine ingested multiple foreign objects within half a second, causing fan imbalance, bearing damage, and automatic shutdown. Civil aviation investigators concluded the cause as human error, compounded by fatigue and procedural lapses. The exclusion zone cones had been misplaced, and no safety marshal or headset operator had been assigned to guard the live engine area. Contrary to protocol, the report noted that Somsak's partially disabled hearing likely prevented him from recognizing the danger as he crossed the line. 2 nights later, airport workers held a quiet vigil on the same apron. Dozens of candles lined the painted red boundary near where he'd fallen. Authorities issued a short statement, acknowledging an incident during ground operations. The 737's damaged engine was overhauled and returned to service 3 months later. It was March 4, 2016 in Antwerp, Belgium. The morning was routine inside the industrial compound of Van Globe Detergents. Nothing about the shift stood out except the quiet foolishness of trying to finish a job too efficiently. Marianne de Wilde, 33, had worked at Van Globe for 8 years. A quality technician, she was known for precision bordering on obsession, neat handwriting in logbooks, exact decimal readings, perfect clipboard margins. Off the clock, she was pragmatic and steady, someone co-workers trusted to double-check their work. But familiarity with the plant made her comfortable enough to cut corners when small things seemed harmless. Her supervisors trusted her so much they rarely questioned her methods. The tanks she monitored were decades old, built from thin stainless steel meant for storing detergents at atmospheric pressure. Negative pressure was their weakness. Every employee learned that during training, yet in practice vents jammed all the time, and draining them without repair was common, a temporary fix that usually worked. The plant's safety manual, laminated and ignored, warned that closed vents during draining may lead to catastrophic collapse. It was written in bold red letters she had probably read 100 times. That morning, Marianne was assigned to drain Tank 4, a 20,000-liter mixer used for concentrated liquids. Maintenance was behind schedule, so she offered to record the procedure as an internal training clip. She set up her phone on a tripod aimed at the tank's lower outlet, speaking clearly to camera as she described the valve sequence. The plant's shift engineer had logged the vent line as sticking the day before, but no repair order had been issued. The vent line above her head had jammed halfway open, but the gauge needle sat motionless, and she dismissed it. A colleague passing through mentioned hearing a hissing tone from the line, but she waved him off, likely assuming it was residual pressure. The tank was nearly empty when the pitch of the sound deepened, a warning no one recognized until too late. In the background of the recording, there's a subtle metallic creak around the 20-second mark. Investigators would later slow that audio to isolate it, the moment when internal pressure dropped below atmospheric. The tank's shell began to flex inward. Marianne stepped closer, glancing at the gauge, still narrating. Then, with no visible trigger, the steel cylinder caved in. It happened in less than half a second. The upper walls folded downward, the seams along the weld snapping like rifle shots. The implosion drew her forward before she could react, a vacuum pulling air and loose foam toward the collapsing surface. Co-workers in the adjacent bay heard what they later described as a single thunderclap. One ran in and found the tank reduced to a crushed oval, ends crimped inward like a squeezed can. They saw the edge of her reflective vest trapped beneath the twisted rim. Emergency teams arrived within minutes, but the damage was complete, a blunt, instantaneous crush injury that left no chance of recovery. The footage she filmed, time-stamped 9/17/42, was used to confirm the failure sequence and timing. Investigators found the vent valve completely seized and the vacuum relief line disconnected during earlier maintenance. A failed vacuum breaker fitting was also found on the floor nearby, likely dislodged by vibration weeks earlier. Operations at Van Globe resumed after 3 days, though most employees refused to work near the rebuilt bay for weeks. Supervisors added new lockout rules and banned solo cleaning procedures. Marianne's recording was edited, muted, and distributed as part of a Continental Safety module. It was April 16, 2017, in Pattaya, Thailand. The streets below the neon lights of Soi Buakau were thinning out after midnight. From the 4th floor of a budget hotel, laughter carried faintly over the sound of traffic. It was the kind of late, stupid hour when small dares start to feel harmless. Michael Torres, 32 from Cebu City, worked as a call center technician handling night shifts for an Australian telecom company. He was known as the type who could make any dull shift bearable. Loud, funny, a little reckless when drinking. That weekend in Pattaya was his first trip abroad, organized by a coworker who'd found cheap flights and a hotel package online. He'd spent most of the night filming TikTok clips, dancing with strangers and showing off their view of the city lights. He wasn't an influencer, just another guy performing for his phone, chasing a few seconds of attention. The hotel itself was old, a 4-story concrete block with chipped blue paint and railings worn smooth from years of salt air. The balconies were narrow, barely 2 feet deep, with a low waist-high rail, legal by code but fragile in places. The ledges beneath them were meant for rain runoff, not for standing. Locals knew that, but tourists treated them like props. Around 1:20 a.m., Michael and 2 co-workers came back from the rooftop bar across the street. The hotel CCTV captured them laughing in the hallway before stepping onto the balcony for cigarettes. Nearby cameras, including one facing the facade from another building, recorded the next 10 minutes in grainy color. They leaned over the railing, gesturing toward the street, then took turns mimicking a viral TikTok challenge, pretending to balance on narrow edges for photos. One of his friends laughed nervously and told him to stop, but Michael, holding his phone in one hand, said he'd done it before. He wasn't serious about danger, it was just part of the act. The footage shows him stepping 1 foot onto the ledge, the other still on the balcony tile. He steadied himself with his left hand on the rail, grinning toward the phone light. A faint metallic creak followed. Not loud, just enough to make one friend glance up. Michael shifted his weight slightly backward, the sole of his sandal slipping on condensation. His hand shot toward the railing but missed by inches. The fall was silent until the brief, dull impact on the awning below, followed by the heavy thud on the pavement. A security guard inside the lobby heard the noise and ran outside. He found Michael face down near the base of the awning frame, one leg folded unnaturally beneath him. The guard's radio log and 911 equivalent dispatch record timestamped the call to emergency services at 1:23 a.m. Paramedics arrived within minutes from a nearby Rescue Foundation unit, but confirmed death on the scene. Blunt force trauma consistent with a 4-story fall. Police documented the position of the phone and cigarette pack nearby before sealing the area. The Thai police report described it as accidental fall due to unsafe behavior. In Cebu, his co-workers collected donations to repatriate his remains. His family received the call before sunrise. Of the 2 friends who had been with him, one later told reporters that the video was deleted immediately after the accident. The other deleted his social media accounts days later. The small funeral service ended before noon, with the family choosing not to speak, only watching as the casket was lowered into the ground under light rain. It was September 14, 2017, in Chicago, Illinois. The air was cooling after a humid day, the evening sky settling into a gray haze over the River North high-rises. On the 18th floor of one of those towers, a defect waited quietly in the stairwell, a section of railing that had been flagged but not repaired. Emily Ward, 28, had recently moved into the building after securing steady work as an administrative assistant at a downtown law firm. Colleagues knew her as cautious, methodical, and reserved. She avoided risks in daily life, often leaving parties early and steering clear of heavy city traffic. Her most visible quirk was her refusal to take elevators. Though friends teased her about the habit, she explained it as a lingering fear from childhood. Each day, she climbed dozens of flights of stairs to reach her unit, telling herself the exertion was worth the peace of mind. The stairwell was utilitarian, with concrete steps, narrow landings, and metal guardrails meant to protect from the steep drop in the open shaft beside the flights. Renovations had been underway, with contractors replacing sections of railing in phases. A maintenance report filed earlier that week noted that one railing on the 18th floor landing was unstable, secured only by a loose joint. A warning sign had been taped over it, but repairs had not yet begun. That Thursday evening, Emily returned home carrying a shoulder bag and small grocery sack. Security footage showed her bypassing the elevators as usual and entering the stairwell. The climb was routine for her, though the late summer humidity made the air heavy in the enclosed space. As she ascended, faint clattering echoed from workers storing tools on lower floors. She passed the taped-off railing at the 18th floor without slowing, her hand brushing it lightly as she shifted her bag. What made that day different was the building's renovation schedule. Contractors had left the railing more compromised than usual, the bolts nearly pulled free from the wall. Several tenants had raised concerns about the stairwell being unsafe, but management allowed access while waiting for replacement materials. That choice, made under the pressure of deadlines and cost, left a hazard in place on a heavily used route. A tenant on the 18th floor later reported hearing Emily pause. She stopped briefly to adjust her bag, leaning against the taped railing with little force. Surveillance footage captured the moment. Emily recoiled, trying to steady herself, but momentum carried her forward into the shaft. Her fall was catastrophic. People outside on the street said they heard a sharp scream echo between the walls of the building. Inside, tenants reported the sound of her body hitting the stairwell ledges as she fell, until she finally struck the lobby floor near the stairwell entrance. The crowd rushed toward her motionless body as others screamed in shock. Multiple bystanders on the scene dialed 911. First responders arrived within minutes, but the trauma was unsurvivable. Emily was pronounced dead at the scene. The bag she had carried spilled across the sidewalk, groceries scattering beside broken concrete fragments from the railing. Shocked tenants stood nearby, many in disbelief that something so simple, a stairwell railing, had failed so completely. Her funeral was held quietly in her hometown of Peoria. Family, co-workers, and neighbors filled the modest chapel, many struggling to reconcile her cautious nature with the violent circumstances of her death. Her parents expressed frustration at the preventable nature of the accident. City officials launched an investigation into the property. Inspectors confirmed that maintenance logs had noted the hazard days before without action taken. The building's management company faced heavy fines, and city officials required immediate structural inspections across similar properties. But unfortunately, no criminal charges were filed. It was October 22, 2016 in Newark, New Jersey. The freight yard stretched dark and quiet at midnight, a maze of parked boxcars and steel tracks slick from the day's rain. Most of the city slept, but inside the yard, temporary repairs had left high-voltage lines exposed above certain sidings, waiting for crews to return in daylight. It was a recipe for something waiting to go wrong. Anthony Tony Delgado, 22, had just finished his night shift at a warehouse a mile away, known as Quiet and Dependable. He lived with his mother and younger sister, contributing much of his paycheck to bills. Trains had fascinated him since childhood, and he often cut through the yard as a shortcut home, believing he knew its layout well enough to avoid hazards. He wasn't reckless but leaned on familiarity to justify risks. Friends sometimes told him to take the long way, but Tony valued shaving minutes off the walk after exhausting shifts. The yard itself was unforgiving. Overhead wires carried 12,000 volts, feeding locomotives through electrified systems. Warning signs were posted, but in dim light they blended into the industrial sprawl. That week, contractors had lifted protective covers for maintenance, leaving certain areas unusually dangerous. Security patrols monitored entrances, but fencing was inconsistent. To a passerby, the lines above could appear dormant, though in reality they pulsed with constant current capable of killing instantly. That night, Tony entered the yard from a side path, hood pulled up against the drizzle. Surveillance cameras captured him walking steadily along a restricted siding. Workers had left equipment nearby, and a stretch of track was blocked by parked boxcars. Security guards noticed him on monitors, but mistook his casual clothes for worker gear. No one intervened. The challenge that night came when Tony reached the row of boxcars. Instead of circling around the obstruction, which would have added several minutes to his route, he climbed a ladder bolted to the side of a car. A conductor waiting nearby later testified he saw Tony pause at the top, crouching slightly, as if to cross over to the next car. The problem was the overhead clearance. The power line ran just 2 feet above. The conductor recalled a sudden burst of light like a camera flash magnified. Electricity arced across the gap, striking Tony's head and shoulders. His body stiffened instantly, arms jerking uncontrollably as the current locked his muscles. Sparks showered down as the smell of burning fabric spread. He collapsed moments later, flames catching on his sweatshirt. His body fell from the roof in a rigid motion, striking the gravel beside the track with a dull thud. Nearby workers screamed, some frozen, others fumbling for their phones. A security camera 20 yards away captured the smoke rising from his clothing as bystanders shouted helplessly. Emergency services were called instantly, arriving within minutes, but paramedics could only confirm death. Severe burns covered much of his torso and head, and the impact of the fall added blunt trauma. The scene remained cordoned off as investigators documented equipment positions and collected the scattered items from Tony's pockets. His funeral in Newark was small, attended by his mother, sister, and close friends from the warehouse. They remembered him as hard-working and gentle, the kind of person who never caused trouble. Authorities later determined that Tony had been trespassing, but acknowledged inadequate fencing and poor lighting contributed to the ease of access. The freight company installed higher barriers, additional signage, and more patrols. It was August 14, 2018 in Dallas, Texas. The air was heavy with heat even in the morning, the kind that clung to concrete and metal. At the Dallas Zoo, routine tasks unfolded as visitors trickled in. Maintenance checks were supposed to be ordinary, but inside the tiger enclosure, a shortcut would set the stage for disaster. Mark Hensley, 35, had worked at the zoo for 7 years as a maintenance technician. Known for being steady and methodical, he was trusted with duties that required precision. Co-workers described him as quiet, a man who kept to routines and took pride in doing things right. Outside work, he lived modestly with his wife and their young son, finding fulfillment in the stability his job provided. He was not the type to seek thrills, but he often pushed himself to keep schedules on track, believing efficiency was part of his responsibility. The environment he worked in was unforgiving. Enclosures housing big cats required strict protocols, double-entry gates, at least 2 staff present, and constant radio communication. Tigers could weigh over 300 pounds, capable of killing within seconds. Staff relied on barriers and procedures more than courage. Any lapse increased risk drastically. That morning, the ground inside the holding area was slick from overnight cleaning, and the service gate was due for inspection. Normally, a partner would have verified it, but Mark, familiar with the setup, believed he could manage a quick sweep alone. He entered just after 9 a.m., captured on surveillance cameras. His coworker later admitted Mark waved him off, saying it would be faster this way. The zoo was beginning to fill with families, and several visitors had stopped near the tiger exhibit. A father filming for his child unknowingly pointed his camera toward the moment everything unraveled. Mark approached the service gate, crouching to examine a latch. The ground was wet, his sneakers slipping slightly as he adjusted his footing. He reached to pull the gate closed, but it had not fully locked. At that moment, one of the tigers, sensing movement, pressed forward. The video showed the animal lunging through the gap just as Mark lost his balance. Witnesses described the tiger clamping onto his arm, yanking him down with terrifying force. Mark's body hit the concrete as the animal dragged him deeper into the enclosure, thrashing violently. Blood sprayed against the ground and nearby walls. Families screamed. Children pulled away as the father's camera shook but kept recording. Zoo staff sprinted toward the scene with fire extinguishers, standard emergency equipment meant to drive animals back. Other staff called for emergency services. They discharged blasts of white spray, momentarily startling the tiger, but not before catastrophic damage was done. Mark's arm was mangled and deep wounds covered his torso and neck. Staff managed to pull him through a secondary gate once the animal backed off, but by then his breathing had slowed. Paramedics arrived quickly, yet efforts to revive him failed during transport. The video, later seized for evidence, confirmed the sequence clearly. His funeral was held the following week, attended by zoo staff in uniform alongside family and community members. His wife stood with their son, supported by relatives, the loss both sudden and preventable. Authorities launched an investigation concluding that safety protocols had been violated. The zoo was fined for allowing single-entry access during inspections. Officials determined the tiger acted naturally and did not order euthanasia, citing human error as the cause. Staff later underwent retraining, and stricter compliance checks were introduced to prevent another tragedy. It was July 8, 2015, in the Gulf of Mexico. The sea churned under the force of a tropical storm, waves striking the legs of a drilling platform with relentless power. On board, the crew fought to stabilize equipment and secure loose gear, each gust of wind testing the limits of steel and rope. For veteran workers, storms were familiar, but this one pressed conditions past safety margins. Derek Collins, 41, had worked offshore drilling for more than a decade. A father of 3 from Lafayette, Louisiana, he was known among his co-workers as cautious and dependable. His reputation was built on years of speaking up when others ignored hazards, and crew members often trusted his judgment during emergencies. Offshore work was grueling. Long shifts, cramped bunks, constant noise. But Derek accepted the hardships to provide for his family. His children's photographs hung inside his locker, a reminder of why he endured weeks away at sea. Drilling platforms relied on layers of safety, reinforced decks, fail-safe cranes, and strict storm protocols. Equipment was built to withstand harsh conditions, but exposure to salt water and constant use made failures inevitable if inspections fell behind. That summer, the crane on Derek's rig had shown signs of strain. Its cables had been scheduled for replacement, yet the work was delayed to keep operations on pace. On calm days, the crane moved supply loads without issue, but under high winds, every joint and line was under extreme stress. On the day of the incident, winds exceeded 60 miles per hour. The crew secured cargo and filmed the storm from inside sheltered spaces, footage later reviewed by investigators. While most stayed clear of exposed decks, Derek went to check a walkway near the crane. He knew loose panels could break free and injure workers if left unsecured. A co-worker later testified that several urged him to wait until conditions eased, but Derek insisted on a quick inspection. As he crossed the slick steel deck, spray from crashing waves coated the surface. He gripped a handrail while leaning to inspect a panel. The crane loomed overhead, its boom swaying unnaturally in the gusts. Crew members inside the control cabin radioed warnings, concerned by the violent motion. Helmet camera footage from another worker captured the moment the structure gave way. The crane collapsed with a sharp metallic crack, its boom slamming downward as cables snapped loose. One cable whipped across the deck with tremendous force, striking Derek in the chest. The impact lifted him off his feet and hurled him over the platform's edge. In the footage, his helmet can be seen bobbing briefly in the storm surge before a wave engulfed it. Witnesses rushed to the railings, throwing life rings into the sea, but visibility was near zero. Rescue boats were launched, fighting through towering waves, but they found only fragments of debris and twisted cable. The storm's power made recovery impossible. By evening, the search was called off, and Derek was declared missing at sea. His funeral in Lafayette was held in a crowded parish church. His wife and children stood with extended family as the service ended. Federal regulators investigated the rig and cited the operators for safety lapses, specifically the failure to suspend non-essential operations during severe weather. The company was fined, and new rules were introduced requiring stricter shutdown procedures in tropical storms. It was March 15, 2016 in Orlando, Florida. The night air carried the sounds of spring break crowds, laughter blending with the mechanical hum of rides in motion. Neon lights illuminated long lines of students and families eager for thrills, masking the underlying risks that came with the machinery towering above them. Few noticed the small malfunctions or hurried attendants working through the busy evening. Jenna Michaels, 19, was a freshman at a Tampa college studying hospitality management. Outgoing in class but cautious outside it, she often avoided situations that felt unpredictable. Friends described her as loyal and eager to be included, though she admitted she disliked amusement rides, calling them unnecessary risks. On that spring break trip, however, she yielded to peer pressure, determined not to be the one left holding bags while others joined in. Pendulum-style rides relied on harnesses and mechanical locks to secure riders against extreme gravitational forces. The design forced riders back into molded seats while steel bars pressed across their chests. Each bar had to latch with an audible click, signaling it was fully locked. Ride attendants bore responsibility for checking each seat before dispatch. Yet when crowds swelled and operators rushed, lapses became more likely. Safety depended not just on the machinery, but on the vigilance of workers. That night, Jenna's group joined the line. Cell phone footage later used in the investigation showed the ride attendant struggling with her restraint. He tugged forcefully until the bar appeared closed, though her friend would later state it had not clicked like the others. The operator allowed the ride to proceed despite the irregularity. The gondola rose slowly before swinging outward in a wide arc, riders screaming with excitement. Jenna held on tightly, visibly tense in the recording. Warnings had been raised earlier in the evening. A different group reported to staff that one seat's bar required unusual force to secure, but their concerns had been dismissed. Maintenance logs confirmed intermittent issues with the restraint system, yet no shutdown had been ordered. With spring break crowds filling the park, closing the ride would have meant long lines spilling elsewhere and lost revenue during a peak night. As the pendulum reached its highest point, Jenna's restraint shifted. Witnesses reported a gap forming between her chest and the bar as the centrifugal force pulled her outward. Multiple recordings captured the exact moment it gave way. Her body lifted from the seat, weightless for an instant before she plunged nearly 80 feet. Screams filled the night as her figure dropped, arms flailing until the impact silenced her. Gasps from the crowd were audible on the footage as the ride swung back overhead, continuing its cycle. Onlookers rushed toward the impact site, some sobbing, others frozen in disbelief. Park employees attempted to cordon off the area, while paramedics were summoned by them. Efforts to resuscitate her failed. She was pronounced dead on site, her spring break trip ending in sudden devastation. The state safety inspectors investigated and found the restraint system in poor condition. Citing both equipment failure and inadequate staff training, the ride was temporarily shut down, and new regulations required attendants to physically confirm audible latches on all seats. Her funeral was held in Tampa, where her parents requested a closed casket. Friends from both high school and college filled the chapel. It was November 3rd, 2017, in Gary, Indiana. The air around the steel plant carried the usual haze, a mix of smoke and metallic dust, but inside the furnace bay, workers sensed an unease that morning. Pressure readings had fluctuated for days, and though repairs were scheduled, the furnace still ran, its dull roar filling the cavernous space. Few realized how close the machinery was to breaking. Ronald Pierce, 46, had been a steelworker for more than 2 decades. Known for steady hands and an uncompromising work ethic, he was nearing retirement and often spoke of leaving the danger behind. His colleagues respected his precision and his ability to troubleshoot under pressure. To younger workers, he was a mentor, reminding them to treat the plant's equipment with caution. For Ronald, risk was something to be managed, not ignored. Steel plants functioned under extreme heat and pressure. Furnaces burned at thousands of degrees, converting raw material into molten steel. Operators relied on gauges and routine inspections to keep conditions stable. Any crack in the lining or spike in pressure could mean disaster, yet workers often faced pressure from management to keep production moving. Delays meant losses, and inspections were sometimes rushed to avoid costly downtime. That morning, Ronald reviewed the readings once more. Coworkers later recalled his expression, serious, measured, as he walked toward the furnace chamber. Repairs had been deferred, but he insisted on a final check before the shift change. Maintenance notes showed repeated warnings about erratic pressure, yet the furnace remained active. With overtime limits tight and deadlines pressing, supervisors had resisted shutting it down. As Ronald approached the inspection point, cameras tracked his movements. He leaned over to examine a gauge when a sharp metallic crack echoed through the chamber. The furnace ruptured without warning. In an instant, a fireball burst outward, illuminating him in blinding orange. A coworker filming from the observation deck captured the moment. Ronald engulfed in flame, collapsing before anyone could react. The blast rattled the building, sending molten metal spraying across the floor. Workers nearby were knocked back, some shielding their faces against the heat. Several rushed toward Ronald, attempting to drag him clear, but the fire had already consumed him. Others suffered burns to their arms and hands in the attempt. A foreman, still gasping from the blast, was the first to dial 911 and report a furnace explosion with multiple injuries. Sirens arrived within minutes as Gary fire crews and paramedics rushed in, moving through heat and debris to reach the injured. Burned workers were carried out on stretchers, while firefighters contained the flames. Ronald was beyond help. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Ronald's funeral in Gary drew hundreds of steelworkers, many wearing their plant jackets in solidarity. His family sat in silence as co-workers carried his hard hat forward. The official investigation cited the plant for ignoring maintenance reports and allowing aging equipment to remain in use. The company faced heavy fines and lawsuits from the workers. It was June 14, 2015, and the morning fog clung to the dramatic coastline of Big Sur as Elena Vasquez positioned her camera equipment along the clifftop ceremony site. The exclusive cliffside resort commanded breathtaking views 400 feet above the Pacific Ocean, where waves crashed against jagged rocks that had claimed countless victims over the decades. The wealthy couple had specifically requested Elena for her reputation of capturing death-defying wedding photos that would dominate social media feeds. Elena had built her photography business on dramatic cliff-edge shots that other photographers were too cautious to attempt. At 29, she had photographed over 200 weddings, each more daring than the last as couples demanded increasingly extreme backdrops for their special day. Her Instagram portfolio showcased brides and grooms posed mere inches from deadly drops, creating images that generated thousands of likes and lucrative referrals. The cliffside resort location had been Elena's suggestion after the couple expressed disappointment with boring traditional venues. She had scouted the site 3 weeks earlier, noting the unstable sandstone edges, but dismissing the danger in favor of the spectacular photographic opportunities. Recent winter storms had further eroded the cliff face, creating overhangs that appeared solid but were actually death traps waiting to collapse. Elena's assistant operated a backup camera from a safe distance while Elena moved closer to the precipice, her professional camera set to burst mode to capture every moment of the ceremony. The couple trusted her expertise completely, following her directions to pose closer to the edge while she backed up to frame the perfect shot that would justify their $15,000 photography fee. Elena's camera recorded in burst mode as she directed the couple to look more romantic while backing toward the cliff edge. The sequence of photos showed her shadow growing longer as she stepped backward, completely focused on her viewfinder rather than the crumbling ground beneath her feet. Her professional instincts demanded the perfect angle, even as warning signs of loose rock went unnoticed. The final frames captured the moment the cliff edge gave way beneath Elena's feet, the camera tipping wildly as she realized her mistake. The images were a chaotic blur of crumbling rock, jagged coastline, and glimpses of her terrified hands as she fell, her scream echoing off the canyon walls while wedding guests watched in horror. The camera, encased in its professional protective case, tumbled over the cliff, smashing against jagged rocks. Its body and lens were destroyed, but the memory card inside survived, preserving the last images Elena had taken. Coast Guard rescue teams recovered her body and the wrecked equipment 3 hours later, using the memory card to piece together the tragic sequence of events. The final photos on her memory card became crucial evidence in the lawsuit against the resort for inadequate safety barriers. Elena's death led to new regulations requiring safety equipment at all clifftop wedding venues, while her final photographs were sealed by court order, but became legendary warnings in photography circles about the deadly cost of the perfect shot. It was May 20th, 2013, and the Oklahoma sky churned with the ominous rotation that veteran storm chasers recognized as the precursor to catastrophic destruction. Jake Morrison adjusted his dashboard cameras as he drove toward Moore, Oklahoma, where an EF5 tornado was forming with winds that would soon exceed 200 miles per hour. His modified chase vehicle bristled with recording equipment while 5,000 viewers watched his live stream, many encouraging him to get closer to the massive storm system. Jake had built his YouTube following by getting dangerously close to tornadoes, earning 4,000 subscribers who craved the adrenaline rush of his near-death encounters with nature's most violent phenomena. At 34, he had been chasing storms for 8 years, each season pushing closer to the deadly vortexes that had made him internet famous. His sponsors demanded increasingly dramatic footage, and Jake delivered by ignoring safety protocols that kept other chasers alive. His chase vehicle had been modified with reinforced windows and a roll cage, but these safety features were designed for debris impacts, not direct tornado encounters. Jake's wife had left him 6 months earlier, taking their 2 children and citing his reckless behavior as grounds for divorce. She had begged him to find safer content, but Jake was addicted to the rush of fame and the substantial income his dangerous videos generated. His therapist had diagnosed him with an addiction to risk-taking behavior, but Jake dismissed the sessions as unnecessary interference with his career. The storm-chasing community had ostracized Jake after he violated their unwritten code of safety, with veteran chasers refusing to share weather data or coordinate with someone they considered a dangerous amateur. His isolation from the professional community meant he relied solely on public weather reports and his own judgment, missing crucial information about the tornado's unprecedented strength and erratic behavior patterns. Jake's equipment setup included 6 cameras positioned throughout his vehicle, designed to capture every angle of his encounters with severe weather. His dashboard displayed real-time wind speed measurements, GPS coordinates, and live stream viewer counts that had become more important to him than actual safety data. The chat feed scrolled constantly with messages from viewers betting on whether he would survive each encounter, treating his life-threatening stunts like entertainment rather than the deadly serious situations they represented. Weather experts had been broadcasting urgent warnings for storm chasers to maintain safe distances from what meteorologists were calling a once-in-a-decade tornado outbreak. But Jake saw opportunity where others saw danger, believing that unprecedented footage of an EF5 tornado would finally land him the television contract he had been pursuing. His live stream chat exploded with excitement as he announced his intention to drive directly into the tornado's path. The National Weather Service had issued its most severe tornado warning in years, with meteorologists pleading for all storm chasers to evacuate the area immediately. Jake ignored these warnings, convinced that his modified vehicle and years of experience would protect him from the unprecedented storm system bearing down on Moore. His final social media post before entering the tornado's path read, "As going to get footage that will change everything. Wish me luck." Jake's dashboard camera captured him laughing and joking about the incredible footage as the tornado grew larger in his windshield, its massive funnel stretching from the ground to the storm clouds above. His final words to his audience were, he shouted to the live stream viewers that this would be his most famous footage yet, his excitement barely masking the danger surrounding him. As he accelerated toward the outer circulation of the deadly vortex, debris already beginning to pelt his reinforced windshield with increasing intensity. Debris began striking Jake's vehicle as he drove into the tornado's outer circulation, and his excited commentary quickly turned to alarm when a piece of flying metal shattered his windshield. The dashboard camera recorded the final chaotic moments, the vehicle being violently lifted, slammed, and tossed by the tornado. Within seconds, the extreme winds and flying debris destroyed the equipment, and the live stream abruptly ended, cutting off all images and sound. Many viewers watched the live stream of Jake, but the signal cut out before the tornado completely overtook his vehicle. Some viewers captured the brief footage before it was removed by platform moderators. Search and rescue teams found his mangled vehicle and body 2 miles from where he had entered the tornado's path, scattered among the debris of destroyed homes and businesses. Jake's final video became a cautionary tale about extreme storm chasing, while YouTube implemented new policies restricting live streams of dangerous activities after his death, sparked international controversy about the responsibility of social media platforms. It was October 31st, 2017, and the abandoned Bethlehem steel plant loomed against the Pennsylvania sky like a monument to industrial decay. Marcus Chen adjusted his helmet camera as he approached the massive facility, its rusted structures and broken windows creating the perfect Halloween atmosphere for his urban exploration blog. The plant had been closed for decades, leaving behind a maze of unstable buildings, toxic chemical tanks, and deep industrial pits that made it one of the most dangerous abandoned sites in America. Marcus had built his following by documenting the decay of America's Rust Belt, specializing in abandoned industrial sites that other explorers avoided due to safety concerns. At 26, he had explored over 100 abandoned locations, each more dangerous than the last, as he sought unique content for his popular blog. His followers craved the thrill of vicarious danger, and Marcus delivered by venturing into places where few dared to tread. The steel plant had been on Marcus's exploration list for months, requiring extensive research into its layout and potential hazards. He had studied old blueprints and safety reports, but nothing could have prepared him for the extent of deterioration that decades of abandonment had caused. His decision to explore alone on Halloween night was driven by his belief that the spooky atmosphere would create compelling content for his upcoming blog post. Marcus's urban exploration career had started innocently enough, with abandoned houses and empty shopping malls, but his audience demanded increasingly dangerous content as his following grew. His girlfriend had broken up with him 3 months earlier, citing his obsession with dangerous locations and his refusal to consider her safety concerns. She had begged him to stick to safer abandoned buildings, but Marcus was convinced that extreme content was the only way to stand out in the crowded urban exploration community. His blog had generated enough income to quit his day job as a graphic designer, but the pressure to maintain his audience meant constantly escalating the danger level of his explorations. Marcus had been hospitalized twice in the past year, once for a tetanus infection from rusty metal, and another time for chemical burns from an abandoned factory's residual toxins. Each incident only seemed to fuel his determination to push further into places that rational people avoided. The Bethlehem steel plant represented the ultimate challenge for Marcus's Halloween special, a location so dangerous that even veteran urban explorers had warned him against attempting it. His research had revealed that the plant contained numerous chemical storage tanks, unstable structures, and deep industrial pits filled with decades of toxic waste. But Marcus saw these hazards as features rather than bugs, believing that the extreme danger would translate into viral content that would cement his reputation in the urban exploration community. His equipment setup included multiple cameras positioned throughout his gear, emergency flares, and a satellite communicator that he rarely used because it interfered with the authentic experience his audience expected. Marcus had dismissed suggestions from other explorers to bring a partner, convinced that solo exploration created more compelling content and allowed him to take risks that safety-conscious companions might prevent. Marcus's headlamp illuminated rusted machinery and chemical tanks as he descended into the plant's basement levels, narrating his exploration for his future audience. His chest-mounted backup camera captured him following what appeared to be a maintenance tunnel, stepping confidently onto a metal grating that looked solid but had been weakened by years of corrosion and chemical exposure. The grating's support beams had been eaten away by decades of acid rain and chemical runoff, creating a death trap that appeared deceptively stable to the untrained eye. Marcus moved steadily across the grating, his headlamp casting shaky light over the tunnel floor. A sudden, sharp crack echoed through the metal beneath him, stopping him mid-step. Before he could react or shift his weight back, the weakened support beams tore loose with a shriek, and the entire section dropped away beneath his feet. His chest camera caught the sudden jolt as the floor vanished, a flash of his hands shooting out instinctively toward the collapsing edges, the headlamp beam whipping wildly across the tunnel walls, and the sickening rush of air as he plunged nearly 60 feet into the darkness below. Marcus's body wasn't discovered for 3 weeks, when other urban explorers found his equipment near the collapsed grating. The chest camera's memory card, protected by a waterproof housing, revealed his final moments and helped investigators understand the accident, while the toxic chemicals in the tank required a hazmat team for body recovery. His death led to increased security at abandoned industrial sites, while his final video became a training tool for urban exploration safety courses, serving as a permanent reminder of the deadly risks hidden in America's abandoned places. It was August 3, 2018, and the Los Angeles skyline glittered in the afternoon sun as Sophia Williams prepared for the stunt that would change her life forever. The 23-year-old social media influencer had gained 5,000 Instagram followers by performing increasingly dangerous rooftop stunts across the city, and today's live stream would either secure her financial future or end her career permanently. Over 4,000 viewers were already watching as she prepared to walk across the 6-inch wide ledge, running around the edge of the 30-story rooftop. Sophia had built her brand on death-defying content that other influencers were too afraid to attempt, turning her fearlessness into a lucrative career that attracted major sponsorship deals. The energy drink company had offered her $10,000 to perform this particular stunt during a live stream, enough money to secure her independence and prove that social media could be a legitimate career path. Her parents had begged her to find safer content, but Sophia was addicted to the adrenaline and attention that dangerous stunts provided. The rooftop location had been scouted weeks earlier, with Sophia practicing the route once during daylight hours when she could focus entirely on the crossing. But live streaming added a dangerous element of distraction, as she would need to interact with her audience while balancing on the 6-inch wide concrete ledge 300 feet above the busy street. Her confidence was bolstered by previous successful stunts, but she had never attempted anything this dangerous while divided between performance and survival. Sophia's phone camera captured her confident smile as she stepped onto the narrow ledge, her designer sneakers gripping the concrete while she waved to her growing audience. The live stream showed her losing focus as she tried to read comments from viewers, many of whom were encouraging her to take even bigger risks for their entertainment. Her attention split between the deadly crossing and her phone screen as engagement numbers climbed higher than ever before. A sudden gust of wind caught Sophia off guard, and her phone continued streaming as she fought to maintain balance on the narrow ledge. The camera recorded a frantic blur of motion, her arms windmilling, the skyline spinning wildly, and her terrified scream was audible to thousands of viewers before the feed cut out mid-fall. Viewers flooded the chat in panic, realizing she had never resumed the stream. Emergency responders later found Sophia's body on the crushed roof of a sedan, her shattered phone scattered across the sidewalk. Viewers had already saved and shared the brief clip from the live stream, and it spread across social media before platforms could remove it, sparking international debates about online responsibility. The incident reignited public debate about social media's role in encouraging dangerous stunts. Instagram faced pressure to limit risky live stream content, and Sophia's final broadcast was soon used in digital ethics courses as a case study on the dark side of viral fame. It was April 7, 2014, and One World Trade Center rose majestically into the New York sky as construction crews put the finishing touches on America's tallest building. Tommy Rodriguez adjusted his mandatory body camera as he began his routine safety inspection on the 89th floor, 1,100 feet above the bustling streets of Manhattan. The 41-year-old construction foreman had spent 20 years building the city's skyline, and this final safety check would clear the way for the building's official opening ceremony. Tommy had worked on dozens of skyscrapers throughout his career, earning a reputation for meticulous attention to safety protocols that had kept his crews alive through countless dangerous situations. The body camera was part of new safety measures implemented after several high-profile construction accidents, designed to document proper procedures and identify potential hazards before they became fatal. His experience and caution had made him the perfect choice for this critical final inspection. The inspection had revealed a loose safety cable that posed a potential hazard to future maintenance workers, and Tommy faced a choice between waiting for the specialized safety crew or fixing the problem himself. His 20 years of experience made the repair seem routine, and the pressure to complete the building on schedule influenced his decision to handle the issue personally rather than delay the opening ceremony. Tommy's body camera recorded him leaning over the building's edge to reach the loose cable, his safety harness appearing secure as he stretched toward the wayward line. The footage showed his confident movements as he worked to secure the cable, completely unaware that his harness clip contained a manufacturing defect that had gone unnoticed during routine inspection. His experience had taught him to trust his equipment completely, a trust that would prove fatal. The camera captured the exact moment Tommy's harness clip failed, and he began to fall. His body and the camera tumbled through the air, spinning violently as he plummeted toward the plaza below. The footage became chaotic and disorienting, showing brief flashes of sky, building edges, and the city far below as the camera spun wildly during his descent. The recording captured fragments of his terrified screams mixed with the rushing wind, but no clear view of his face or precise movements during the fall. Tommy's body was found on the plaza below, the body camera destroyed on impact, but its memory card recovered from the wreckage. The fragmented footage revealed that the harness's locking carabiner had a hairline crack that snapped under load, leading to a massive recall of defective safety equipment, while the construction company faced criminal charges for inadequate inspection protocols. Tommy's final video became mandatory viewing in construction safety training programs, serving as a permanent reminder that even the most experienced workers are only as safe as their equipment allows. It was September 8, 2016, and Snake River Canyon stretched before Ryan "Rocket" Johnson like the ultimate test of his daredevil career. The 35-year-old professional stunt performer had spent 2 years planning his attempt to recreate Evel Knievel's famous canyon jump using modern rocket-powered motorcycle technology. Multiple cameras positioned around the 1,500-foot canyon gap would capture every angle of the jump for a documentary about modern daredevils, while Ryan's helmet camera would provide the most intimate footage of his historic attempt. Ryan had calculated every aspect of the jump with scientific precision, studying wind patterns, trajectory angles, and landing zone requirements with the help of aerospace engineers. His specially modified motorcycle incorporated the latest rocket technology and dual parachute systems designed to ensure a safe landing on the canyon's far side. Weather conditions were perfect, with minimal wind and clear visibility that would allow the cameras to capture every moment of his flight. The documentary crew had been following Ryan's preparation for months, documenting his training regimen and the technical challenges of recreating one of stunt history's most famous failures. Ryan's confidence was absolute as he revved his rocket-powered motorcycle, believing that modern technology would succeed where Evel Knievel had failed decades earlier. His helmet camera captured his pre-jump routine as he accelerated down the launch ramp toward the canyon edge. Ryan's helmet camera recorded him accelerating to nearly 200 miles per hour under rocket thrust as he raced toward the launch ramp, the horizontal speed calculated to carry him safely across the 1,500-foot gap. The Snake River was visible far below as his motorcycle launched perfectly into the air, the rocket motor propelling him forward while multiple cameras captured the historic leap from every angle. The camera recorded the moment Ryan's primary parachute deployment system malfunctioned, failing to slow his descent as he reached the apex of his jump. As he began to fall, the helmet camera footage became increasingly chaotic and disorienting, spinning and tumbling violently as Ryan and his motorcycle plummeted toward the canyon floor. The shaky footage captured glimpses of his desperate attempt to deploy the backup chute, but the violent motion made it impossible to see clear details of his actions. It took rescue crews nearly 6 hours to recover Ryan's body and motorcycle, as the steep canyon walls and loose rock made descent dangerous. Rappelling teams had to secure anchor points before reaching the crash site, and a helicopter was eventually used to airlift the wreckage out at sunset. The helmet camera was destroyed on impact, but investigators were able to recover part of the memory card. Only fragments of the footage were salvageable, showing Ryan's jump, the moment of parachute failure, and a few seconds of his struggle before the data cut off. Forensic inspection of the recovered parachute hardware revealed clean tool marks on the primary deployment pin and residue from a cutting blade on the backup chute lines, clear signs of deliberate tampering. Investigators traced the sabotage to a disgruntled former crew member who had recently been dismissed from the project. The fragmented helmet footage showed Ryan's final moments, while the forensic findings confirmed the cause of the disaster. The documentary featuring Ryan's jump was completed posthumously, serving as both a tribute to his courage and a warning about the deadly consequences when safety systems fail. It was February 14, 2016, when Marcus Chen made the decision that would forever change everything. The 28-year-old IT support technician from Denver had always been the quiet type, preferring computer screens to social gatherings. His co-workers knew him as reliable but reserved, someone who kept to himself and rarely joined after-work activities. Snowboarding had become Marcus's escape from troubleshooting network issues. For 5 years, he had methodically worked up from bunny slopes to intermediate runs, always cautious, always within his comfort zone. His technique was decent but unrefined, the product of weekend warrior dedication rather than natural talent. 3 months earlier, Marcus started a YouTube channel called Chen's Mountain Adventures, hoping to document his progression. With only 200 subscribers, mostly friends and fellow snowboarding enthusiasts, his videos rarely broke double-digit views. But Marcus persisted, driven by quiet determination to prove he could be more than another cubicle worker. Devil's Peak had been calling to him for weeks. He had watched other YouTubers carve down its pristine slopes, their cameras capturing powder sprays like liquid diamonds. The 45-degree gradient promised dramatic footage that might finally boost his channel. What Marcus failed to research was why those slopes remained so perfectly untouched. At 6 a.m. on that Valentine's morning, Marcus arrived at Devil's Peak alone, his chest-mounted GoPro recording. The parking area was eerily empty, and multiple orange warning signs caught his attention briefly. Avalanche danger, they proclaimed. But Marcus had seen similar signs at other mountains where he had snowboarded safely. His inexperience with backcountry conditions made him dismiss the warnings as standard legal protection. The hike took 45 minutes, his breath forming crystalline clouds in -15-degree air. Marcus narrated his ascent, his voice betraying nervous excitement about his most challenging run yet. Wind had been working on the snow for days, creating what experts would later identify as a classic wind-loaded slab formation. At 7:23 a.m., Marcus began his descent, his board cutting confidently through the upper section. The GoPro captured every moment as he gained speed, his technique surprisingly smooth for someone attempting terrain beyond his skill level. About 200 feet down, he attempted a more aggressive turn. The moment his edge bit into the wind-loaded snow slab, physics took control. The fracture line propagated across the slope face with thunderous sound, creating a Class 4 avalanche measuring 15,000 cubic meters of moving snow. Marcus's camera recorded his realization that the entire mountainside was moving beneath him. The GoPro captured horrifying details as Marcus was swept up in snow traveling at 60 miles per hour, his body tumbling violently 800 vertical feet down the mountain. The camera recorded sickening impacts as he struck buried rocks and trees, suffering compound fractures to both legs and severe internal trauma. The avalanche came to rest in a natural depression, leaving Marcus buried under 12 feet of compacted snow. The GoPro continued recording for 3 minutes and 47 seconds, capturing only darkness and gradually slowing breathing before the battery died. Search and rescue teams began searching February 16th after Marcus failed to return home. The recovery took 6 days, hampered by unstable conditions. When they located Marcus using avalanche transceivers, the GoPro remained attached, its memory card intact. The footage became a sobering reminder of how quickly mountains turn deadly. Devil's Peak's warning system was upgraded with multilingual postings and detailed avalanche education. Marcus's YouTube channel, frozen at 200 subscribers, became an unintended memorial to respecting mountain warnings and understanding limitations. It was November 18, 2014, when the third shift at Midwest Chemical Processing Plant in Detroit became a nightmare that would forever change industrial safety protocols. James Thompson, 45, had been the backbone of the night maintenance crew for 12 years. A quiet, methodical man standing 5 feet 8 inches with calloused hands and graying temples, he carried the weight of responsibility both at work and at home. Divorced 3 years prior, James lived alone in a cramped apartment on Detroit's east side, working double shifts to meet child support obligations for his 2 teenagers, Sarah and Michael. His co-workers knew James as the guy who never missed a shift and always followed procedures. What they didn't know was that beneath his reserved exterior, James harbored growing concerns about the plant's aging infrastructure. He'd noticed corroded fittings and pressure irregularities, but management seemed more interested in production quotas than safety reports. That's when his 17-year-old son, Michael, a tech-savvy high school senior, set up a cloud backup system on his father's smartphone, teaching him how to record and automatically upload videos as evidence of safety violations. For 3 weeks, James had been quietly documenting his concerns. Short clips of leaking valves and corroded pipes are automatically uploaded to cloud storage, creating an inadvertent digital diary of industrial negligence. The night shift on November 18th started normally. James clocked in at 11 p.m. and began his rounds. Near Tank 7, pressure readings were climbing beyond normal parameters, and the emergency release valve showed severe corrosion. At 11:47 p.m., James pulled out his phone and began recording, narrating his observations. The live stream captured his methodical approach as he attempted to manually release the dangerous pressure buildup, describing the corroded fitting that had been flagged but never addressed. What happened next unfolded in terrifying slow motion. The corroded fitting failed catastrophically. The tank ruptured with explosive force, releasing a massive vapor cloud. Within seconds, the cloud found an ignition source from a nearby electrical panel, creating a fireball that engulfed the entire section. The live stream continued for 8 more seconds, recording the initial blast before connection was lost. James suffered burns over 95% of his body, his respiratory system destroyed by superheated gases. He died within 30 seconds, a victim of the very hazards he'd been documenting. The explosion shook buildings 2 miles away, bringing fire departments racing to the scene. The plant's evacuation procedures prevented additional casualties. Michael accessed his father's cloud storage, discovering the automatically uploaded footage that captured the exact moment of disaster. The video became crucial evidence for OSHA investigators, revealing the precise sequence of equipment failures and management negligence. The wrongful death lawsuit resulted in a multi-million-dollar settlement and sweeping safety changes. James Thompson's final documentation had exposed systemic failures endangering countless workers. Today, the plant operates under new safety standards requiring digital documentation with automatic cloud backup. James's legacy lives on in every safety report uploaded, ensuring no workers' concerns are ignored. It was March 22, 2018, when a routine construction day in Manhattan's Upper East Side turned into a catastrophic reminder of how quickly industrial accidents can shatter lives. Miguel Santos, 26, had been chasing the American dream for 3 years since immigrating from Guadalajara, Mexico. Standing 5 feet 6 inches with muscular arms earned from manual labor, Miguel possessed infectious optimism, despite the language barrier that sometimes left him nodding along to conversations he only half understood. Living in a cramped Queens apartment with his wife Carmen and 18-month-old daughter Isabella, Miguel worked construction 6 days a week, sending half his paycheck to his elderly parents in Mexico. His limited English made him hesitant to speak up, but his work ethic was legendary on job sites. Miguel had discovered that volunteering for extra duties like social media documentation could earn overtime pay. The construction company required progress footage for their website, and Miguel eagerly volunteered, seeing it as an opportunity to prove his value beyond manual labor. The 47-story luxury residential project on East 79th Street was behind schedule, creating pressure that trickled down to workers like Miguel. Project foreman Rick Castellano, known for cutting corners, had positioned Miguel near the crane's base with instructions to capture dramatic close-up shots of concrete beam lifts. What Miguel didn't know was that Castellano had deliberately placed him inside the crane's exclusion zone, the safety perimeter that should have been off-limits during lifting operations. The foreman wanted impressive footage for clients, and Miguel's eagerness made him perfect for the dangerous assignment. At 2:30 p.m., Miguel stood directly beneath the towering 150-foot crane, phone in hand, filming as operator Antonio Reyes attempted to lift a massive 5-ton concrete beam. The crane, a 20-year-old model working overtime for months, groaned under excessive weight beyond its rated capacity. Miguel's phone captured the critical moment when the overloaded boom began to buckle. The footage showed the exact instant when the weld joint at the boom's base, weakened by metal fatigue from months of overuse, started to crack and fail. The recording continued as the massive steel boom snapped completely, the 150-foot structure beginning its deadly descent directly toward Miguel's position. Despite the chaos above, Miguel remained focused on filming, unaware that death was falling from the sky. The boom struck Miguel with devastating force after its 150-foot fall. He suffered catastrophic crushing injuries to his head and torso, dying instantly from the impact. His phone continued recording for several seconds before going black. Antonio survived in his operator's cab but suffered severe psychological trauma. The experienced crane operator, who had repeatedly warned management about the equipment's deteriorating condition, quit construction work entirely. The first 8 seconds of Miguel's phone footage were recovered from the damaged memory card. The partial recording provided crucial evidence of the overloading and structural failure that led to the tragedy. City inspectors used Miguel's final footage to identify multiple safety violations, including deliberate placement of workers inside exclusion zones and equipment use beyond rated capacity. The investigation revealed a pattern of ignored safety shortcuts. Miguel's family received a substantial settlement that secured Isabella's education and allowed Carmen to stay home. Enhanced exclusion zones and stricter crane safety enforcement were implemented citywide. Miguel's final documentation had exposed the deadly consequences of prioritizing profits over worker safety, ensuring his sacrifice would protect future construction workers reaching for their own American dreams. It was October 8, 2017, when the unthinkable happened to Frank and Margaret O'Brien in Pine Ridge Community, Northern California. Frank, 67, was a methodical man who had spent 35 years delivering mail through rain and shine. His meticulous nature made him a favorite among residents who could set their clocks by his punctual deliveries. Margaret, 64, possessed the nurturing spirit that made her beloved by countless children during her 20-year tenure, serving lunch at the local elementary school. Her warm smile and extra portions for hungry kids earned her the nickname Grandma Maggie among students. Both lived on modest pensions in their cozy mountain retreat, a small wooden home they had purchased 10 years earlier when rising housing prices forced them from the valley below. The 1,200-square-foot cabin represented their American dream on a budget, complete with a wraparound porch where they spent evenings watching deer graze in their yard. The couple had always been practical about their financial limitations. Their fire safety preparations consisted of basic garden hoses and clearing brush when Frank's arthritis allowed. However, after recent break-ins plagued their neighborhood, Frank had reluctantly invested in a simple 2-camera security system. One camera monitored their front porch, while another watched their living room, both automatically uploading footage to cloud storage every 30 minutes. That fateful afternoon at 3:15 p.m., both cameras were recording when unexpected wind shifts transformed their peaceful Sunday into a nightmare. The exterior camera captured the terrifying speed at which flames consumed their wooden fence and the dry vegetation surrounding their property. Within minutes, their sanctuary became a death trap as embers ignited their roof shingles. The footage revealed Frank's desperate attempt to protect their home, wielding their garden hose against the advancing inferno. His methodical postal worker precision served him even in crisis, as he systematically wet down the house exterior, starting with the most vulnerable areas. However, the thick smoke overwhelmed his aging lungs, and he collapsed near their front steps, still clutching the hose. Meanwhile, the interior camera documented Margaret's frantic efforts to gather their important documents from the living room. Her nurturing instincts kicked in as she tried to save their precious memories, photo albums, and social security paperwork. Tragically, smoke filled the narrow hallway, trapping her inside their bedroom area. The carbon monoxide silently claimed both victims as they succumbed to smoke inhalation and toxic gas exposure. Both cameras continued recording until the flames destroyed the equipment, but their final upload occurred 25 minutes before destruction, preserving the complete timeline of events in haunting detail. Firefighters discovered their bodies 2 days later when the area was declared safe for search and rescue operations. The recovered cloud footage provided investigators with a heartbreaking but complete account of how the rapidly moving fire trapped the elderly couple in their final moments. Their death sparked significant changes in emergency protocols across Northern California. The incident highlighted critical gaps in rural communication systems, leading to improved evacuation notification procedures throughout the region. Frank and Margaret's final moments, preserved by technology Frank had installed for security, became a catalyst for protecting other families from similar tragedies. The O'Brien story serves as a sobering reminder of how quickly nature's fury can overwhelm even the most prepared individuals, and how their legacy continues through the safety improvements their sacrifice inspired. It was August 12, 2016, when 24-year-old Kevin Park made a decision that would forever change how Arizona's slot canyons are monitored. Kevin was a recent college graduate from Portland, Oregon, working part-time at a camera store while building his photography portfolio. Standing 5 feet 8 inches with messy brown hair, Kevin possessed the restless energy of someone determined to make his mark. His personality mixed ambition with inexperience. Kevin had discovered slot canyon photography just 6 months earlier, after seeing stunning images online. The narrow, sculpted passages captivated his imagination, though he remained a novice hiker with only 3 previous canyon explorations in safer areas. Kevin was staying at a rundown Page, Arizona motel, surviving on a $200 budget for his week-long photography vacation. His beat-up Honda Civic contained basic discount hiking gear, and his most valuable possession was a mid-range DSLR camera he'd saved months to afford. At 1:30 p.m., Kevin began live streaming to his modest YouTube channel of 150 subscribers. His channel, Kevin's Canyon Quest, documented his journey from amateur to professional photographer. He was particularly excited about this narrow, technical slot canyon exploration. The Antelope Canyon area was experiencing typical August weather, with afternoon thunderstorms building over distant mesas. Kevin, focused on photography and eager to impress his online audience, failed to recognize the significance of darkening clouds 15 miles away. At exactly 2:45 p.m., while Kevin crouched in a narrow canyon section adjusting camera settings and narrating to viewers, rushing water echoed off canyon walls. Within seconds, a 6-foot wall of muddy water and debris traveling at 20 miles per hour rounded the bend ahead. Kevin's live stream captured everything. His voice shifted from excitement to panic as he realized his situation. The smooth, sculpted walls offered no handholds or escape routes. Kevin attempted to climb, his sneakers slipping against polished sandstone as water rose around his legs. The torrent swept Kevin 200 yards downstream in 30 seconds. His phone recorded the chaotic tumble through churning brown water filled with rocks and debris. The final moment showed Kevin's head striking a large boulder before the phone submerged, ending the broadcast. Kevin suffered a severe skull fracture and drowned in turbulent floodwater. His body became wedged between rocks as the flood continued through the canyon system. Search and rescue teams, alerted by concerned viewers who witnessed the live stream, found Kevin's body 12 hours later when the water receded. The recovery required specialized equipment and experienced canyon rescue personnel. Kevin's tragic death sparked significant safety changes. Authorities installed improved warning signs about flash flood dangers at canyon entrances, enhanced weather monitoring systems for slot canyon areas, and developed better communication protocols between meteorologists and park services. His story serves as a sobering reminder that nature's beauty often masks deadly dangers, and that experience, preparation, and respect for natural forces can mean the difference between capturing the perfect shot and becoming another cautionary tale carved into the desert's unforgiving landscape. It was March 15, 2014, when Danny Rodriguez's dedication to safety protocols couldn't save him from a preventable tragedy at Quick Stop gas station in suburban Houston, Texas. Danny, a 41-year-old father of 2 teenage sons, had been working the graveyard shift at the station for 3 years. His wife, Maria, often worried about him working alone during those quiet 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. hours. But Danny was methodical and cautious by nature. Exactly the kind of employee you'd want handling fuel and potentially dangerous equipment. His supervisor frequently praised his attention to detail and commitment to following every safety procedure to the letter. For weeks, Danny had been reporting a persistent gasoline odor near pump number 3. Despite his repeated requests, management kept postponing the professional inspection, citing budget constraints and claiming the smell wasn't strong enough to warrant immediate concern. Danny's meticulous nature made him check that area multiple times each shift, documenting the issue in his daily reports. The quick stop featured 8 security cameras strategically positioned to monitor all pump areas and the store interior. The system automatically uploaded footage to cloud storage every 10 minutes, a feature that would prove crucial in the investigation that followed. At 3:20 a.m. that fateful morning, the exterior cameras captured Danny conducting his routine pump inspection. The footage showed him crouching near pump 3, his flashlight revealing what appeared to be a significant leak in the underground fuel line. Gas vapors were clearly visible accumulating around the pump area, despite Danny's immediate attempts to activate the emergency fuel shutoff system. The security cameras recorded Danny's methodical response. He followed protocol perfectly, attempting to contain the situation while the vapors continued building. Multiple camera angles captured the moment a customer pulled up to pump 2 in a beat-up pickup truck. The man stepped out casually, a lit cigarette dangling from his lips, completely ignoring the prominent no smoking signs posted throughout the station. Danny noticed the customer and began moving toward him, likely to warn about the dangerous situation. The cameras captured the exact moment the cigarette ignited the accumulated gas vapors. The massive explosion engulfed both men instantly, with Danny suffering fatal thermal burns and trauma from the blast pressure. The smoking customer was also killed immediately. The explosion destroyed 3 gas pumps and damaged 6 vehicles in the vicinity. Fortunately, the CCTV footage had been uploaded to cloud servers just 10 minutes before the cameras were destroyed in the blast. Fire investigators used the multi-angle footage to reconstruct the exact sequence of events. The video evidence clearly showed Danny's professional response to the gas leak and the customer's fatal disregard for safety warnings. The investigation revealed that the underground fuel line had been deteriorating for months, with Danny's reports providing a clear timeline of the developing hazard. The tragedy led to significant safety improvements across the country. Enhanced no-smoking enforcement protocols were implemented, along with mandatory emergency shutoff systems and improved vapor detection equipment for all gas stations. Danny's meticulous documentation and the security footage became the foundation for new industry safety standards. Danny Rodriguez died doing what he always did, following safety procedures and trying to protect others. His legacy lives on in the enhanced safety measures that now protect countless gas station workers and customers throughout Texas. Just when you think you've seen the worst disasters caught on camera. Thanks for watching. Want to watch more? Click on your screen now.